So I was just rereading some of the works that I've been reading now for almost 2 decades, and that's the Stoics. And the Stoics never cease to amaze because all of the wisdom that we have in modernity, even all of the teachings that have come to us in New Age, everything in the perennial philosophy, everything that we've put into interiorism and that we talk about on this channel, the Stoics grasped it and they grasped it well. It's just amazing. And actually, once you learn interiorism, once you're steeped in this knowledge and this philosophy, when you go back and read the Stoics, even in translation, and scholars have bones to pick on how the words to be translated and so on and so forth. If you are like most of the viewers of our channel, advanced students of interiorism, you will be able to understand the Stoics perfectly. And it's just incredible. I was rereading the Enchiridion of Epictetus. And for those of you who don't know who Epictetus was, I'm just reading a little bit from the bio here from the Daily Stoic. He was one of the greatest philosophers of Stoicism. He was actually born as a slave. He was born nearly 2,000 years ago in Hierapolis, present-day Pamukkale in Turkey, as a slave in a wealthy household. Epaphroditus, his owner, gave him the permission to pursue liberal studies, so he was kind and at the same time a brutal owner, as you'll see. And this is how Epictetus discovered philosophy through the Stoic Musonius Rufus, who was actually a Roman Stoic philosopher, who became his teacher and mentor. Later, Epictetus obtained his freedom shortly after Emperor Nero's death, started teaching philosophy in Rome for nearly 25 years. This lasted until the Emperor Domitian famously banished all philosophers in Rome. Epictetus fled to Nicopolis in Greece, where he founded a philosophy school and taught there until his death. So Stoicism had kings. Of course, you had Marcus Aurelius, many great politicians and men of status, as well as slaves and former slaves in their reign, because it's a philosophy for everybody. And to me, Stoicism is a unique embodiment of the perennial philosophy, as is Buddhist philosophy, as is Islamic philosophy, as is Christian philosophy, and you'll see here. But one of the most touching aspects is that one day Epictetus' master was punishing him, and he kept turning his leg, and Epictetus said, you will break it. And he continued turning. He actually broke Epictetus' leg. But Epictetus was so disciplined, and he was so in the world of interiorism, as we would call it, that his only reaction was he smiled and calmly said, I told you would break it. There was no recording of him wailing or screaming or going crazy. He just said, I told you would break it. That's the kind of equanimity that Stoicism, that interiorism promises and offers. So I just wanted to read maybe 2 or 3 passages of this great book, the Enchiridion. And the Enchiridion was a summary that I believe was written by one of Epictetus' students of his main teaching. So this is just the summary. And of course, the discourses of Epictetus has, more detailed exegesis on what he says. Actually, lecture notes by Arrian. But the handbook is just some pithy statements, and you will see the immediate import of them. And it's just great, I think, to go back to the greats. It's great to go back to our roots, the roots of interiorism, which include a lot of mystical teachings, and which also include just the good, useful teachings of the Stoic philosophers. Of course, philosophy now is seen as a discipline that's engaged in by people in the ivory tower, that's engaged in by people who really don't have worldly cares. But philosophy, during the time of the Greeks and Romans, was something that you actually practiced, and normal working people were able to put it into practice. So let's see what he said here. Of course, the main teaching of Stoicism and Epictetus was that there's a separation between that which you can control and that which you cannot control. And this motif is seen throughout the perennial philosophy. In interiorism, we look at it as there's a separation between what's going on the outer and what's going on the inner. You can completely control your interior. I'll prove it to you now. Let's say you're in your room. Close your eyes and let's say you imagine yourself on a beach. Do that. You're immediately on a beach, or let's say you imagine yourself in the desert. You can control your interior immediately. So the Stoics made a distinction between this. They used a little bit different language, but it turns out to be the same thing. And what he says is this: the things in our control are by nature free, unrestrained, unhindered. But those that are not in our control are weak, slavish, restrained, belonging to others. Remember, if you're depending on anybody else, and others include things outside of you, if you're depending on something in the world happening, something in the world changing so that you can be happy, you're enslaved by the outer, and therefore you're not focusing on that which is in your control, and you're going to be frustrated. He says, remember then that if you suppose the things which are slavish by nature are also free, and that which belongs to others is your own, then you will be hindered. You will lament, you will be disturbed, and you will find fault both with gods and men. And isn't that the way all of our contemporaries almost are living now? But if you suppose that only to be your own which is your own, and what belongs to others, such as it really is, then no one will ever compel you or restrain you, because you're not depending on anybody or anything on the outside. Further, you will find fault with no one or accuse no one. And of course, in interiorism, we take this a step further. As Neville Goddard said, you will forgive all men because everything is you pushed out. You're creating that. Epictetus doesn't say it explicitly, but the implicit meaning is derived from that nonetheless. You will do nothing against your will. No one will hurt you, will have no enemies, and you may never be harmed. If you stick only with that which is in the interior, you can never be harmed. And I want to do a few videos on this, but what I want to do is read one passage which I think is incredible, and I think only if you understand interiorism, only if you understand this more mystical aspect, can you fully understand the passage. It's a beautiful passage about the ship. And in mystical philosophies, the ship has always stood for your true inner being. Even if you see the people who believe in extraterrestrials, they call their vehicle the ship. And even some people say the mothership. Well, your true inner being, that is the ship. Keep that in mind as you listen to this passage. Consider when on a voyage your ship is anchored. If you go on shore to get water, you may along the way amuse yourself with picking up a shellfish. Now remember, water also stands for that consciousness. But it is a consciousness that is conditional. So the ship is that unconditioned consciousness. It's the Father. The water is that consciousness, or it could be described as the Holy Spirit, that is conditioned. That is something that you are now focused on. So you come to this earth from the ship, which means we all came here to this dual reality. We came from oneness to this dual reality to seek water, which is to learn how to modulate and modify our consciousness and thus create what we wish to create on the screen of reality. That's quote-unquote the reason why we came, even though that is to say that we came for a reason is itself a logical distortion. But we can use that as sort of an anchor or sort of an explanation. So we came for water, but you may amuse yourself with picking up a shellfish or an onion. So we can enjoy the pleasures of this life. But remember, here's where he goes with this. However, your thoughts and continual attention ought to be bent towards the ship, waiting for the captain to call on board. You must then immediately leave all these things, otherwise you will be thrown into the ship bound neck and feet like a sheep. Now, you can enjoy life. You can even enjoy your manifestations. That's what we're here to do, but do not get attached to them. Why? Because once you get on a film roll, as Neville Goddard describes, once you attain your desires, that sets into sequence another chain of events that will then, of course, cause you to be upset. And when you become upset, that's the captain calling you back to the ship, which is the ship of going into the silence, the ship of going into meditation, the ship of going into your inner being. So whenever you see a problem, or you become upset, or you become attached to something, go immediately to the ship. Now, there's an option not to do that. So let's say you're attached to a specific person or to wealth, and you either get that or you don't get everything that you want. We're taught to go into the ship, and of course you go into the ship, then you can come back out and you can take that water and you can imagine things and declare things as you want them to be and be in that state, and then that will come to you. Or you can simply keep seeking on the worldly plane. And as Jesus said, be in the world but not of it. Now, if you're of the world, no problem, welcome. But the problem is, you're going to be dragged and thrown onto that ship, bound neck and feet like a sheep. Why? Because things are going to get so bad that you're going to have no choice but to get on that ship. Either you're going to do it by going insane, you're going to do it by leaving this physical experience, or you're going to have a transformative experience. Things are going to get so stressful that you're going to be forced to go within. What Epictetus is saying, go within periodically, remain close to that, remain close to your inner being, remain close to the silence, and then things will be easy, because immediately when you have a problem, you just, as Neville Goddard said in Daniel in the Lion's Den, you simply turn to that light, you turn within, and then all of your problems are solved. As one great guru said, I believe Krishnamurti, attention is like a fire, it's like an acid, it dissolves all problems. But if you don't do that, then life's going to force you to do it later. That's why we're here. Everyone's going to get there. It's not like some people won't get there. Everyone's going to be saved. It's just a question of, do you want to be dragged there, or do you want to go there? As Marcus Aurelius said, be upright. Do not be forced to be upright, because you will be forced eventually, but do it of your own free will. It's a lot easier. And then he says, so it is with life, this parable. If instead of an onion or a shellfish you were given a wife or a child, that's fine. We're all called to enjoy life, to take women, to marry, to have children. But if the captain calls, and I believe Epictetus means death here, but as we know, death doesn't exist. This is the constant daily death of dying to the illusion and going back to the truth of who we are, our inner being. If the captain calls, you must run to the ship, leaving them and regarding none of them. So your family, your goods, all of your property, this film roll, when you're called, it means when things get bad or when you're reminded to go back within, you must go back within. And of course, you can do that in a second. You can quantum rest. And then, everything, you remember who you are. You remember. But if you're old, never go far from the ship, lest when you're called, you should be unable to come in time. And I believe this means when you're practiced in these modalities, when you're firm in interiorism, you're old on the path, or when you're getting gray hairs perhaps, then stay close to the ship, because you know that all out there is an illusion. And you know that we're not here for the out there, we're here for the in here. And then once we get the interior correct, everything on the outer solves itself. So the older you get, I think once you hit 40, Marcus Aurelius said, an intelligent man, when he hits 40, he's seen everything there is to see in life. Once you hit 40, you know that we're not chasing after anything out there. It does no good to chase and to effort and to try to work hard or beg, to try to have things out there. We know that we simply, when we want something, we simply go within, we remember who we are, and then everything on the outer is added. As Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom and its righteousness, and everything will be added unto you. So when you're older in the path, go to that immediately. These are just some quotes from Epictetus. We'll have more videos on these and on the Stoics, because I think it's great to go back and remind ourselves of these aspects every now and then. It's incredible how their teachings so many years ago align perfectly with all of the mystical teachings and with all of the perennial philosophy. So guys, until very soon, remember, I am doing coaching calls. Email me in the description. We'll talk about setting up a call if you want to go into these things more deeply with someone who's experienced on the path. And as always, please do share the videos, subscribe and like for weekly videos on interiorism. Until very soon, guys, much love and appreciation. This is Javier with The Real Javier Novoa, bidding you a wonderful rest of the weekend.